Episode 7, Betrayal and New Questions. Warning, my voice is a little off. In a fit of rage, a man broke out from the crowd and hurled a stone at Milan. It gave him a strangled groan, falling to his knees. Blood gushed from his brow, getting it into his eye, but he continued to stare at the one he no longer had the right to ask for mercy from. Lotta stood in the crowd, clenching her fists and fighting back tears. Every muscle in her body was tense. Her feelings were fluttering painfully in her chest like a trapped bird. She couldn't believe that her friend was right there, accused of such a terrible crime as murder. Her father wrapped an arm around her shoulders. His movements were awkward and nervous.
"I choke him with my own 2 hands.
Lotta looked up to her father. It wasn't Milan. It can't be. It was especially painful for Lotta's mother to see her daughter's trust and friendship get shattered that way. She thought bitterly that in every person's life there came a moment when trust was lost completely. The elder stepped forward, his voice booming, deep, strong, silencing the screams.
"Milan, you are accused of murdering our sister. Do you admit your guilt?"
Milan raised his head, meeting Lotta's sharp gaze. It made him shudder harder than the stones thrown at him. There was pain and a plea for forgiveness in his eyes. He took a deep breath and whispered, "I admit it." The crowd murmured, the men clenched their fists, and the women buried their faces in their husbands' shoulders. Sienna squeezed the priestess's hand so hard it turned white. Layla was looking at him with horror and disgust. Milla covered her face with her hands. The tragedy that had befallen the village had left everyone trembling. Lotta was so devastated that she stood there motionless. She was silent, and the only tears that finally broke free betrayed her feelings. This is a mistake. It doesn't make sense. Her friend, someone she had known since childhood, committed an unforgivable crime. Milan's face turned pale, his eyes shining bright with fear and despair. He hung his head, not daring to meet the gazes of those who had recently been close to him. The elder continued, raising his hand to demand silence.
"You will be sent into the Haze for what you've done. Let the evil spirits decide your fate."
Milan's mother screamed in the distance. Milan's parents weren't allowed to go near him so they wouldn't interfere with the punishment. Ozar and the High Priestess were watching everything without interfering. Then the Magus gave a sign, and Volit and the old priest walked over to Milan. They lifted him from his knees and led him towards the fog. One more step, and the condemned would disappear into it forever. Lotta couldn't hold back anymore. She broke out of the crowd and rushed to him, grabbing his arm. "Why are you doing this? Who made you?" He squeezed her hand back and his eyes welled up, responding to her cries with the same bitter tears. "I'm sorry, Lotta. The last thing I wanted to do was hurt you." "You couldn't have done this, Milana, I know." Her father tried to pull her away. "Why?" Her father pulled her away from Milan gently but firmly and led her back into the crowd. Milan looked up at Volit. He looked very small and defenseless compared to the priest. "Will you go by yourself?" Milan looked back at the village. His haunted eyes scanned the crowd's faces, looking for his parents, not finding them. He answered quietly, "Yes, I'll go by myself." He swallowed a few times, holding back a sob. He was scared. He wanted to huddle against his mother's chest for one last time. Time to go. Milan nodded rapidly, feeling his lips tremble with tears. He realized that he shouldn't have been afraid of the priest all that time. The worst nightmare was the impenetrable darkness he had to enter. Now he admired Volet and would have given a lot to trade places with him. He would have liked to just be as strong and fearless. He consoled himself with the fact that he had shown no less strength and fearlessness, but the thought vanished in the face of the impending horror. There was no turning back. The priest wouldn't let him run away. Milan turned around one last time, but there were only unfriendly faces around him. Where are you? Why am I going to die alone? Why can't I see your eyes? He took a step into the fog, feeling his legs buckle from fear. Then another step. The fog immediately wrapped around his body like a snake. The air turned cool and humid. He looked back, but all he saw were blurred silhouettes. He burst into loud sobs. There was no point in holding back. Not that he could. And walked on. A piercing, almost feral scream full of pain and horror pierced the sudden silence. Lotta shuddered and closed her eyes in fear. She'd never heard such a terrible scream. That's what it's like, the haze. We have to get rid of the haze. Why was he screaming? What did the haze do to him? Dangerous and powerful. I think each and every one of these answers is pretty good, but I'm gonna go with, why was he screaming? What did the haze do to him? Like your curiosity, I guess. Why is this happening to us? The high priestess raised her hand to the sky and began reciting a prayer. Milan's mother broke free from the people holding her and ran towards the fog, but the old priest intercepted her. She screamed no less terribly and kept screaming until she was led away. The crowd began to disperse. Poor woman. Milan had disappeared into the fog, and his scream kept echoing in the hearts of those who loved him. Lotta felt her parents' hands on her. They were trying to console her and found solace in her presence as well. Hannah stood there transfixed, staring into the fog. Her face remained indifferent, blank with incomprehension. Does she understand? Lotta followed her gaze and gasped softly, her skin prickling with goosebumps. Varia was standing on the edge of the fog. Lotta turned to where her sister's ashen, thin finger was pointing. In the distance, unnoticed by anyone, stood a figure. The stranger seemed to sense someone was watching him. He immediately turned around and walked slowly towards the forest. I've seen him before. Lotta wanted to follow him, but her mother's trembling hand stopped her. It's over, Varia. We'll find peace now. They feel relieved, but I don't. Milan, what happened? Stranger, what part did he play in your exile? I have to tell the priestess, the elder. I have to tell someone who will listen, will be able to bear the weight of yet another secret. Dragan came up to them. Lotta's ears instantly pricked up in anger and sadness. She suddenly remembered her mother's words about Dragan fighting with Milan and Milan's reaction to her question. Was there any connection there? Dragan wasn't looking at her. After talking to her father, he said goodbye, but Lotta didn't let him leave. She asked her parents not to wait for her and quickly caught up to him, blocking his way. She was breathing heavily and couldn't think of anything else. Dragan looked at her calmly, yet with some hidden tension. What should I ask him? Why did you make him go into the haze? What are you hiding from me, from us? Do you believe Milan could have done it? What are you hiding from us? He looked confused.
What are you talking about?
You had a fight with him the other day. With Varia before her death. He took a quick step forward, his eyebrows furrowed ominously over his eyes, burning with rage.
Do you suspect me?
I want to figure it out. I don't believe it. It can't be. It seems you know something, and...
Is it easier for you to believe I did it rather than anyone else?
I didn't say that. Lotta knew she was being foolish, regretted having started the conversation so suddenly, but she realized she needed to know. To know what happened to Varia and Milan, otherwise she would go insane from obsessive and cruel assumptions. She took a step towards him. I'm not blaming you, I'm really not. The sincere sympathy in her voice cooled the blacksmith's hot temper.
I understand that you're upset.
He sighed, shaking his head, but still replied.
I didn't touch Milan. We hardly ever spoke. As for Varia, she was crying because of me, yes, and I will regret having made her cry for the rest of my life. But I didn't kill her. I would never lay a finger on her.
You loved her. He glanced at the fog, clenched his fist, and immediately unclenched them.
You don't want to accept that your best friend did it, I understand. But I didn't do it.
Lotta felt a lump rise in her throat. I know. He looked down at her from his great height and saw her suffering, yet desperately trying to hide her pain. He hugged her against him. Lotta froze, holding her breath. He sensed her confusion.
I miss Varia too.
Hearing those words, Lotta closed her eyes. They were so bittersweet. She suddenly wanted them to be a lie, however selfish and cruel that may have been. She didn't understand why. Why she wanted to push him away, to hit him. Why did those words bring her even more pain? But she didn't push him away. She continued to linger in his awkward embrace. His hands, scarred by hard work, lay on her back, almost weightlessly. She wanted him to squeeze her heart, or squeeze her so hard that she couldn't breathe. She needed it to feel it, to realize that he was there with her and not with her sister's ghost. She needed support. Lotta took a breath, inhaling his scent. He smelled of iron, metallic, cool, like rusty rain. It reminded her of an anvil and the sparks flying in all directions. He smelled of coal, smoke. The subtle, heady scent enveloped her hand like a cloak. He smelled like a furnace, and there was something primal, ancient in the smoke, like the earth itself. There were notes of sweat in the mixture of those scents, not sharp, but distinct. It was the scent of effort, calluses, strong muscles, the scent of a man who was not afraid of hard work. Lotta took another breath. All the smells blended into one full scent, fresh, tarred, with just a hint of soap. It reminded her of safety, home, of something close and dear. She stood in his arms with her eyes closed, allowing herself to forget about the world around her for a moment. She liked being that close to him, feeling his touch, but she didn't dare show it. Lotta was hiding her feelings, not daring to admit them even to herself. His hands trembled slightly, but he tried to keep calm so as not to betray his emotions. He knew that the moments meant more to him than he could allow himself to show. Lotta listened to her sensations, feeling his fingers gently caress her back and his breath mingle with her own. Her body responded to his touch with unacceptable enthusiasm. She pressed a little closer to him, and although neither of them dared to say it aloud, their silence said more than words could. What was that? Reconciliation, a confession, or a momentary weakness? He remembered his mother's words, the words that always came true. He let go and took a step back. Lotta looked at him, hurt by his decision. He stepped back first. He always pushed her away when she wanted the opposite more than anything in the world. I've got work to do. He was talking to her in an indifferent voice that Varia never knew. Lotta swallowed, her upset. She thought of Milan again. The flicker of grief flashed in her eyes. She didn't say anything and slowly walked back home. Dragan watched her go, forcing himself to remember Varia's eyes. Lotta returned home to help her parents. Even though there was sorrow and a lot of unshed tears hanging in the air, they seemed noticeably livelier. Now they knew what had happened to their daughter and could find the courage to move on. We really didn't find out what happened, but sure. When she finished her chores, Lotta decided to take a walk. Outfit time, let's go. Alright, so we got flower, meadow, sparrow, I like, freebird, embroidered, and straw. I won't lie, I like this one. The Native American kind of accents, or Viking too. It's kind of a mix in between if you ever really notice. It's really tough. It's I like both, but I feel like that one's weird. So I'm gonna go sparrow. Stop there. Hairstyle, summer night, waterfall, evening glow, dewdrops. I like evening glow. Little flowers. Stop here. Sometimes, when she got lost in her thought, her feet would lead her to a place where she had last seen her sister. She stood there for a while as if she was waiting to feel something special, but her heart remained calm. That time was no exception. Lotta realized that where she was going only when she saw Tata. She stood looking at the ground as Lotta usually did when she was there. I didn't see her at the Veche. Was she there? Did she see Milan? Lotta came closer to her. Hi. Tata took a few steps back and sat down on the grass. She wrapped her arms around her bent knees and said thoughtfully without looking up from the ground, I threw the first stone. It hit him right in the face. I threw at him and ran away. Tata burst into tears and buried her face in her knees. Lotta sat down next to Tata, full of sympathy for her. Meanwhile, she continued baring her soul. Her voice sounded muffled and strained. I liked him. I even thought we could become friends. She raised her head, staring right ahead. I'm worthless. What was I hoping for? Her lips trembled at the new thoughts swirling around her in her head. Poor Varia. Do you really think Milan did it? Tata turned her tear-stained face to Lotta. Rosy-cheeked, red eyes, lashes stuck together by tears. She was especially beautiful. Sincere, open, real. He said they had a fight. He said he wanted to teach her a lesson, but he overdid it. What did they argue about? He wouldn't tell me. Don't you think it's weird? Tata looked at Lotta for a moment. It was obvious from her eyes that she was trying hard to understand. Then she said pity in her voice. You don't think Milan is guilty? He would never do something like that. But he did. Maybe Varia found out about something and he wanted to hide it. What would he want to hide? Does it matter now? Yes. That's how you solve a crime. We need to find out. Why would he confess to something he didn't do? Lotta, please stop. Tata shook her head, looking back at the wall of fog floating along them. It's my fault. I couldn't accept it, and now you've followed in my footsteps. But the murder has been punished. It's over. We need to let Varia go. Let her reunite with the gods in peace. But I keep seeing her ghost. She's giving me signs. I saw a man. You are not letting go of her spirit. You're tormenting her. Allow Varia to be free from the burden of being. Lotta thought about it. Mad with grief, she had pulled the fabric of the mirror and prevented her sister's spirit from leaving. All those dreams, hints, could be merely a cry for help. Varia could also be asking Lotta to let her go, but she imagined something completely different. Gods, what have I done? Tata curled up again, hiding her face. Support her. There was a sweet freshness in the air, mixed with the scent of grass and mint. The soft rustle of leaves was soothing, but it couldn't drown out Tata's sobbing. Lotta searched for words of comfort for a long time, but couldn't think of anything to say. Instead, she put her hand on Tata's back and patted her several times. That only made her cry all the harder, which scared Lotta, but then Tata suddenly stopped and sat upright. She took a deep breath, wiped away her tears.
I'm sorry. It's so embarrassing. You must think I'm weak.
No, not at all. I cried too.
Really? I thought you couldn't cry.
For some reason, those words stung her. That's not true.
I'm sorry.
Stop apologizing. Tata let out a ragged breath, gathering her thoughts. We can be friends.
What?
Lotta almost laughed at the look of surprise on her face. We can be friends. You won't be alone, Tata. Things will get very sad without Milan and Varia. I don't want to talk to anyone. Tata smiled, moving closer to her. Even though Tata's smile was somewhat forced, she said cheerfully and resolutely,
Don't worry. I'll come visit you. I can help with the housework.
Who helps you? You're all alone, Tata. Thank you. In return, I'll help you too.
All right.
Tata looked at Lotta, not letting the smile fade from her face. Lotta noticed the corners of her mouth starting to tremble. She's pretending again. Her thoughts must have reflected on her face as Tata hastily looked away, no longer forcing herself to smile. Tata only had her grandmother after her death. She was alone for a long time, abandoned by everyone, no one's girl. And then Varia appeared, and Tata hoped that there would be a person in that world who cared about her. But Varia died. And now Milan, someone who could have taken a place in her empty heart, is also taken away by death. She wanted to hold a special place in Tata's heart, support Tata. This one's a tough one. Because you want to support her, duh. And holding a special place in her heart and vice versa is kind of... It's the same as support to me, so... A place Lotta would never leave. Tata has become dear to you. Varia wanted me to be friends with you. I resisted, but now I regret it. You're wonderful, Tata. Tears welled up in her eyes again. She raised her head, meeting Lotta's attentive gaze. Lotta stared back at her. Her hair waved softly to her shoulders, and her gaze shone with concern and sympathy. Tata's eyes were full of worry, but at the same time there was a spark that she herself didn't know about. Some kind of interest and hope filled her pupils. Lotta felt her heart beat faster. It seemed to her that time itself was standing still. It was a new and unexpected feeling. There was a warmth inside her that drew her to Tata. She wanted to, protect her from all harm, kiss her. I'm gonna go ahead and do it. But Tata was a woman. Slowly, uncertainly, Lotta leaned over to her friend. She felt her lips tremble with excitement. Tata didn't move, but she looked shy and scared. Their lips met, innocent, motionless. Barely feeling the touch, and Tata's hot breath, Lotta pulled away. She looked at her in surprise, as if she wasn't the only one who took that step. Tata clapped her hand to her mouth.
What did you just do?
I don't know. Lotta was under the impression that her love and passion should have been directed towards a man. That was the case with the women she knew. Once she saw two women kiss in front of her, but they had been drunk and she thought that they must have lost themselves in the fire and enthusiasm of ritual dancing. Could they have kissed in broad daylight when sober and for no particular reason? Lotta closed her eyes and tried to remember all the moments she had spent with Tata. Their conversations, meetings, the walks around the village. She didn't think much of it at the time, but now, looking back, she realized that those were special moments for her. Why was this happening to her? Why had she done that? Lotta thought that she was meant to only feel that way about men, but Tada's smile, her voice, even her tears, there was something frighteningly attractive about it. Lotta didn't know what to do. Fear, embarrassment mingled with excitement and anticipation. She wanted to talk to someone, but didn't believe that anyone in the world could understand her. Lotta was afraid to admit, even to herself, that her desire to kiss Tata was a conscious one. She was a woman. She was supposed to like men, right? A realization began to form within her that love was not confined by gender, but Lotta was not yet ready to acknowledge it. For now, she just wanted to feel the warmth of her lips. That was all. She found herself unable to resist the thought. Lotta opened her eyes. Tata looked at her suspiciously, ready to recoil from her. "I won't kiss you again. Don't get mad at me." "Are you like Ista and Velasta?" In what way?" "They kiss each other when no one's looking." "I don't know. It's not like that." "Then why did you do that?" "Did you dislike it?" Lotta bit her lip and looked away. She shouldn't have asked that. Instead of answering, Tata stood up and nervously smoothed down the hem of her dress. "I have to go." "I should get going, too." Her voice was emotionless and wistful. Tata gave her another puzzled look and hurried off. Lotta remained seated. She ran her fingers through her hair and closed her eyes again. Why did I do that, and why do I want more? She remained seated and tried not to think about what had happened. Your relationship won't be the same, but isn't that what you wanted? Interesting question. I mean, meh. But one confusing thought led to another. Maybe I'll explain at the end. Lotta pressed her cold hands to her cheeks and took a deep breath. She replayed over and over in her mind that moment when Milan disappeared into the fog, and her chest tightened with bitter pity. What if he really killed Varia? Does he deserve sympathy? I don't know. We don't know the reason. We don't know anything behind it. And then people go, well, does that matter? Yes, it does. That's like killing someone in a crime of passion. Yes, they still killed someone, but at least there's a reason to it. There's closure. There's something. Also, I just noticed the trees sway. Interesting. Cool. I mean, if he killed Varia, no, he doesn't deserve compassion, but he didn't feel sorry for my sister, so why should I feel sorry for him? Lotta struck herself lightly with the fist as if that could help or shatter the lead ball lodged in her stomach. And yet I can't get my head around this. It doesn't make sense. Milan and Varia didn't have anything to argue about. Doubt crept into her mind. What if they did? Blinded by the light. Everything comes at a price, right? It is the will of the gods. You could go without the white light. Were you talking about killing Varia? Lotta dropped her head on her knees, and she felt almost broken as Tata. But she didn't cry. She couldn't, even if she wanted to. Lotta listened to her heart, and she was scared by the silence that answered her. The emptiness inside her was getting bigger, like a disease spreading. Until I find out that Milan is innocent, I won't think of him at all. Either way, he took away my chance to find out for sure what happened to my sister. A liar. Whichever way you look at it, he's a liar. The next day, Lotta followed the priests obediently. Her clothes weighed heavily on her shoulders. From now on, she would join them more and more often, plunging deeper into the mysteries of the world. The thought was exciting, but also frightening. Long, bare tree trunks reached up towards the sky like pillars. One had to raise their head to see the needle sticking out in all directions. It smelled of pine trees, rain, and danger. The High Priestess and Magus were walking behind her, talking quietly about something. Lotta had an obsessive urge to turn around. She felt Ozar's gaze on her, burning and attentive. They were headed to where she wanted to go for a long time, but had never ventured so far into the forest. Lotta hoped that day she would get answers to her questions. The air grew heavy as they approached. Lotta could no longer see any birds or small animals. Her uneasiness grew stronger with every step. She tugged nervously at the edge of her cloak, looking for something among the trees. Finally, she saw bones of gigantic size towering over the forest-covering hill. Attack on Titans much? The trees tiny compared to the remains of the gods, insignificant like grass under the feet of Titans. Thin, fragile blades of grass, they were nothing more than helpless sprouts trying to reach the sky. The very tops of the bones seemed to reach the sky. Their ends were hidden in the fine mist. Lotta didn't even notice how she stopped, her mouth slightly open in surprise and awe. The High Priestess gently touched her back. Stunning, isn't it? Be speechless. I never fully believed they existed. They're beautiful. I mean, okay, I walk out of a clearing and I look up to see giant skeletons that look like gods. Or, well, supposedly they're supposed to be, right? I don't know. Then I kind of sad that supposedly gods can die, so I don't know. I never believed they existed. How about that?
But here they are, right in front of you. And they are waiting for you.
The wind passing through the gaps between the ribs created eerie sounds. Path of Haze. There's something wrong about this, something wicked. The world around the bones was losing its shape, a form, turning into a mythical space where the line between reality and legend blurred. Lotta felt like a grain of sand in the bottom of a river, defenseless before the might of those who had once walked those lands. She was terrified at the thought that the gods might rise again. What if they passed through the village, destroying hundreds of lives under their giant feet? They won't even notice. Why would such creatures favor insects like us? I mean, good question. Lotta looked into the distance and couldn't see the end of those bones. One god was replaced by another, and so they lay in a row as if something had struck them all in an instant. Silent, immortal guardians, they protected the borders of their small world, of which the Haze never managed to take. The priest stopped some distance away, not daring to get too close to the gods. Ozar held out his hand to Lotta. Are you coming? Lotta felt her cheeks heat up with embarrassment. She lowered her head, allowing her hair to fall into her face, partially hiding it. His gaze, it's always so ambiguous. Does he remember our ritual? Our ritual. Lotta felt embarrassed that they had something tying them together, even if it was just a ritual. What should I do? Reach out in response. Nod, but don't hold out your hand. Take a step back. Why not? With her hands touched, a spark flashed between them, causing their fingers to tremble. It was like Perun's lightning strike. Ozar's glad that you trust him. Lotta stood next to the bones where a torch was lit. It seems like the fire has been burning for many, many years. Who is that? The priestess's voice came from behind her.
Perun. There is always a sacred fire burning next to him, which never wind, rain, nor man can extinguish.
Give me a second. Let me bury it in the soil. Let's see how quick it goes up. I'm serious. Lotta held out her breath for a moment. Ask her to tell you more about the gods. The priestess's voice was low and soft, like scraping against old birch bark.
The supreme deity, the god of thunder and lightning, the master of everything. We sacrifice bulls and other large animals to him. He once wielded stone arrows and hurled them from the sky to the ground during rainstorms. But since his death, we haven't seen a single lightning strike. Perun fought against evil spirits, but now there's no one to kill them. They swarm out there beyond the haze.
She spoke slowly and very quietly, soothing Lotta's worries. Question, what about if Kratos killed them? I just had to, leave me alone. It felt like a fairy tale, one of those Your grandmother used to tell her as a child.
To worship Perun, the first people kept the fire going all day and night. They burned oak logs, and if the keeper negligently allowed the fire to go out, he was punished with death.
That seems reasonable. Sent into the Haze.
That's right. But now the fire cannot be extinguished. It is a last glimmer of divine power.
Without blinking, Lotta looked at the bones of Prune, yellowed and even blackened by time in some places. She wanted to touch them, but she didn't dare. How did he die? The priestess was silent for so long that Lotta thought there was no answer, but yet it came.
His death was the most horrible.
He spoke in a whisper in fear of opening the eternal wound of the deity.
All the gods suffered, but Perun was punished terribly. We don't know what happened to them. We only retain a vestige of our former knowledge.
So then how the hell do you know it was terrible? Is that why our oaks are dying?
The oaks belong to Perun. They're leaving with their god.
You're starting to learn the secrets of Warrior World. I am! This makes no sense. And even though only the bones remain of the gods, I can still hear their breathing. Ozar reached out and touched a rough rib. Lotta held her breath. Wasn't that sacrilege? But no punishment followed. It seemed Ozar was indeed chosen by the gods. The priestess took a step back, leaving Lotta and Magus alone. Lotta stole a glance at Volet. I'm sorry, what? Volet's here too? She could almost feel his gaze on her, but she wasn't sure if he was really watching her. Lotta looked timidly at the bones. They towered over her, majestic, ancient. They had existed long before her birth and would keep existing long after her death. You promised you'd help me. I fulfilled my part. Lotta whispered, feeling embarrassed by her words, and therefore keeping her head down. People like her had no right to demand. The Magi only obeyed the gods. I remember. Will you ask them? They don't always respond. Lotta dared to look away at him, boiling with rage. You only look at me like that when you're angry. I could get addicted. You lied to me. Never. He also spoke in a whisper. I had a dream. I saw your future. I'll tell you. If the gods decide to tell me about your sister, I'll tell you everything I learn. What should I say? See the dream through Ozar's eyes. Tell me about it. I don't want to know what my future holds. See it through his eyes. Ozar. Ozar was lying on the pillows, looking at Layla sleeping. Or rather, pretending to be asleep so that she didn't have to leave. However, he didn't care. In truth, his eyes were devoid of interest, even though they were fixed on her naked body. The Magus's thoughts were far away from his room. Lotta had spent the night at Ozar's. He had performed a ritual on her, although it wasn't necessary. The Magus already had a feeling that a vision would come soon. He just wanted to test her, keep her there with him. Out of boredom, out of curiosity, out of distrust, the High Priestess wanted to teach her their craft what for. Ozar wanted to find out. His eyelids were getting heavier. He knew that night he would see something related to Lotta. The gods had been especially quiet lately, so it was important for him to see what he should expect. Ozar thoughtfully ran his finger over his lips, tightly pressed together. He couldn't help remembering how shyly and awkwardly Lotta had touched his face. He could easily manipulate her, should the need arise, for he needed sleep. Should he kick Layla out? No. He'll make a scene, then that vision will vanish. Ozar sighed wearily and closed his eyes as he tossed and turned to find a comfortable position. Layla's breathing deepened. She was probably waiting for him to join her. Not tonight. Darkness veiled his eyes, growing deeper with every moment and transporting him into a different world. The Magus allowed himself to be led to the maze of chaos, and then he saw
I wish I could go to sleep this damn easily. Oh, okay. The whole entire village is on fire. Lotta is walking barefoot, her feet bleeding. The night creeps over the village like a black veil, and only bright flames cast their menacing glow on the huts. Thick smoke merges with dark clouds, enveloping the village in a dense shroud. The silhouettes of fleeing people are barely visible. The wooden huts, which served as shelter for centuries, are now engulfed in all-consuming flame. The villagers are rushing around searching for some way to escape. The women are screaming, calling for their children. The men are trying to break through the wall of fire to save at least some of their property. Lotta's bare feet are burning, but she doesn't stop. She goes to the old well, the only place untouched by the flames. Lotta knows that she has to get there, since it holds the answers to all of her questions. Her eyes look like they're glazed, like she's possessed. She looks down into the depths of the black water, and a soft whisper escapes from her lips. And Haze will take us. Okay.
Blessed one, Magus, wake up!
Thank you for ruining my vision. Asshole. Ozar clutched Layla's arm, still recovering from the vision.
You were screaming.
Did I say anything? Layla shook her head with a horrified expression on her face.
No.
Ozar fell back on the pillows and hid his eyes in the crook of his elbow.
Did the gods show you something?
Ozar was silent.
Should I leave?
He parted his lips dry from screaming and only said, yes. Layla was holding back the tears welling up at her eyes.
He's so cold to me sometimes. Can I come back tomorrow?
Ozar was silent, still hiding behind his arm. Layla was afraid to provoke his anger, even though she's never seen him angry before. But something told her that she shouldn't press him for an answer. When she left, Ozar dropped his arm and looked at the ceiling. What role does Lotta play in what's destined to happen? It's a good question. Lotta waited patiently for Ozar's answer. Finally, she couldn't take it anymore and repeated her question. So what did you see? The Magus waved away the memory and said, something will happen and the village will be consumed by fire. You'll witness it. That's it? He paused before answering. That's it. Lotta frowned. He's hiding something. Why? What's going to cause the fire? That I don't know. So many questions. You have learned that there will be a fire, and they all remain unanswered. I thought I could tell the priestess about everything that worries me. Tell her about the stranger who was following Milan. But they have their secrets too. Can I trust them so blindly? Shouldn't I be cautious, patient, wait until I can find the answers myself? Varia, is it really you, or am I being tormented by the evil spirits that have taken your form? What should I do? I want to be wise and strong, but I am neither. But if I have time, I'll become that kind of person. Because only the wise and brave are allowed to know the answers to their questions. Lotta didn't notice that she was being watched. The priestess' bushy eyebrows furrowed over her tired eyes. She was thinking about whether she had done the right thing by offering Lotta to become a priestess. Had she been too hasty in her conclusions? If you want to talk to the gods, ask Volet. He will take you there. Our gaze is more often turned to the haze and the unknown than to the gods. It could ruin her, ruin us. But before it's too late, I have to guide her myself. She's so much like me. Ozar looked at the priestess, then turned his gaze back to Lotta. He saw that she was sad, thoughtful,
could guess what doubts tormented her. "There's a place I'd like to show you when we're done." Lotta nodded, thinking only of what they were going to do. Ozar gestured to the priests, and they walked in sync towards the bones. Even the gods had not been spared by time. Conquered by eternal silence, their remains inevitably got covered with moss. They had become home for tiny creatures who couldn't comprehend the immovable force contained in their bones. The priest carefully cleaned the bones of weeds and insects. Even the high priestess didn't shy away from work and kneeled down with a grunt. She crawled around at the foot of the giants, gathered dry leaves, and her face gave no indication of shame or fatigue, because they were all dust before the power of the gods, and the high priestess was no exception. Okay, so infinity symbol for any of these choices. Okay, we have, but there was something humiliating about it. That's how it was supposed to be. They go great lengths to get the gods' mercy, but did the gods care about such trivial things? I mean, they are going to such great lengths to get the gods' mercy, and the gods, did they even care about such things? I mean, if they were even gods, though, that's the thing. I have so many questions. It actually is not a bad book. I'm gonna go with reality. They don't give up, even falling on their knees. I thought no one should touch them. Yeah, I mean, that's what we were told. That's why I'm like, huh? Ozar gently caught her hand and guided it to the gods. His big, smooth hand pressed her to the bones. Lotta couldn't tell what excited her more, the warmth of his hand or the cold of the divine remains. They're ice cold, like death itself. But, like the creatures crawling all over them, she couldn't linger around the gods for too long. Lotta felt a sharp but fleeting pain pierce her fingers. She pulled her hand away and took a few steps back, clutching her palm. What was that? Ozar narrowed his eyes, watching her. He looked over his shoulder to check if the others had seen it. Violet, of course. Leaving her no opportunity to express her surprise out loud, he distracted her with work. I understand there's nothing mysterious about this, but no one else is allowed to approach the gods, and therefore we're honored to take care of them. Lotta understood what he was trying to say. She joined the others, taking off the cloak she had grown tired of. She kneeled down next to the priestess and began pulling up the weeds and moss. Have you changed your mind yet? She looked at Lotta with a condescending but warm smile, the way grandmothers look at their grandchildren. Lotta smiled back at her without answering. She hadn't changed her mind, but not because she liked it. She tried to hide her sadness and patient longing. The priestess interpreted Lotta's smile in her own way. It's always like this. Secrets are always attractive, but they lose their charm when you reveal them. Yeah, kind of like a magician telling his tricks. This is it? This is all you do? Lotta bit her tongue, furiously pulled at a weed, berating herself for the disappointment that crept into her voice. They'll think that I become one of them just for fun. No, this is not all. You have much to learn, but all in due time. She paused and then added, and it's better for some mysteries to keep their charm forever. Lotta froze, thinking, I'm not interested in all the mysteries, and I will definitely solve the ones I need with or without your help. When she finished, Lotta helped the priestess up. She dusted her dress and hands, mulling over the conversation. Ozar came up to her. The priests and priestesses have other things to do. We can go. Lotta gave him an incredulous look. Just the two of us? With Magus, you don't have to worry about evil spirits. Soon you will feel the Haze is avoiding you. Violet, who had been silent all that time, suddenly spoke, and his voice sounded so firm that the Magus himself would not dare to contradict him. I'm coming with you. With us? Ozar didn't hide his surprise. Let him come. Lotta felt a sudden surge of anticipation as the priest approached them. Why would he want to come with us? The priestess and the old priest left them near the bones and soon disappeared among the trees. Lotta felt awkward being alone with two men. So, what is this place you wanted to show me? I'll satisfy your curiosity soon. Lotta quickly looked away. They returned to the forest and walked towards the village for a while until they veered off the road. Violet followed them silently. Lotta moved forward almost blindly, looking at her feet as not to trip over the fallen logs. Occasionally, some shrub would poke her calves, and she scratched her legs irritably, wishing she hadn't agreed to that adventure. Lotta raised her head, hearing the first splashes of water. She heard a growing rumble coming from around the bend. There was a heavy moisture in the air. Is that... The river that runs around our village starts in the forest. We won't get to its source, but you'll see part of its path. They slowly moved forward, stepping over rocks and other obstacles. To understand this world, you don't have to look at its beginnings. It's enough to watch how the present bends and be able to adjust. Follow all the twists and turns to learn how to swim before the current throws you into the deep end. Lotta vaguely understood what he was talking about. As usual, his words were full of double meanings. But she didn't want to continue the conversation and only said, I agree, everyone has their own path. Bloody double meanings. I'll agree with him. Yeah, I'll agree with him. We must get used to living in the world that has been given to us. You can build the world yourself and direct it the way you like, instead of simply getting used to it. Is that what you're doing? Guiding us where your gaze is directed? I'm not doing anything yet, Lotta. Twisting like a snake, the river cut through the dense thickets of coniferous forest. They followed its direction, climbing higher and higher. The village is far behind. It seems peaceful here, but it's an illusion. Lotta narrowed her eyes at Violet and Ozar. They scare away the evil spirits. Finally, they finished climbing. They slowed down, listening. At this point, the river broke off from a low cliff to continue its way further into the forest. Lotta looked at the small waterfall crashing onto the rocks. Let's go down. They crossed the river and went down to the foot of the waterfall. Lotta stretched out her arm, letting the splashes of water refresh her body. The river was calmer below. It smoothly skirted driftwood and rocks, and no hurry to go anywhere. Its waters were cool and clear. Why did you bring me here? I think Violet will explain it better. The priest took off the skull and put it on the ground, and then crouched down and ran his hand over the moist soil. We call this place Quiet Water. Clear, cold water coming out of the ground. It cleanses and washes away all sorrows. The evil spirits may be afraid to approach, but they are drawn to us. I think you can feel the undead following you around. Following on your heels, yearning to reach you, but not daring to. His words sent unpleasant shivers down her spine. Can the evil spirits take on the face of your loved ones? It happens, sometimes. The river relieves us of the burden of our duty, lifts the weight off our shoulders, washes our hands drenched in blood. Violet spoke thoughtfully, watching the water bubbling down below. Ozar sat down, letting his legs dangle over the edge. His shoes almost touched the water. I brought you here to take a swim. Trust me, it will make you feel better. Lotta looked uncertainly at the river. Should I? Go into the water and swim, dip your feet, refuse. She nodded decisively and a little nervously. All right, Ozar leaned on his arms stretched behind his back. "Good girl." Lotta bent down and lifted the hem of her skirt. She felt embarrassed, but quickly overcame it. She took off her dress, stayed in her chemise, not looking up so as not to betray her feelings. She didn't want to seem nervous and cowardly. As a child, she'd often swum with boys and girls in the river, but the time seemed long lost under the layer of dust. Other women weren't shy about baring themselves in front of men. During the celebrations, it was not uncommon to meet a running woman with bouncing breasts and a bubbly laugh. But Lotta was not one to show off. She prayed that when she got wet, her shirt wouldn't reveal what it shouldn't, then carefully slipped off the edge and plunged into the water. The intense cold sank its claws into her body. Her bones ached. Her teeth chattered involuntarily. Her muscles wouldn't work. "What do you think?" "I feel very relaxed." Even Volet couldn't help but smile. The corners of his mouth twitched up ever so slightly, but immediately turned back down as if they had struck an obstacle. "Why don't you go deeper?" Lotta gritted her teeth and held back a sharp protest. Instead, she took a deep breath but grimaced as she felt the cold seep into her lungs. "I hope I don't get sick." She forced herself to bend her knees. Why they changed her hair, I'll never know. Now the water was up to her throat. "I need to move." She swam on. She wanted to get close to the waterfall, but soon realized that the water there was going to be even colder. Ozar and Volet watched her from the riverbank. Lotta turned away so that they wouldn't see her face twisted in pain. But despite the physical strain, somewhere in the back of her mind there was a pleasant feeling that she couldn't quite grasp because of the cold. The water smelt clean, fresh. Its scent mingled with the aroma of tree bark and damp earth. There was peace in that flowing coldness. Something deep within her stirred at the sight of water cascading down. Occasionally small droplets fell from the stone ledges and reached her face. They managed to get warm in the air and felt good on her skin. "I think I'm getting used to it." Lotta lay on her back and threw her arms wide, allowing the water to guide her. She stared at the gray sky, feeling something broken inside her finally found peace. "How's the water?" The Magus's voice echoed across the surface of the river. Suddenly, she had playfully and uncharacteristically bold idea. Invite Ozar, invite Volet, invite both. "I mean, if I'm gonna do this..." "I feel really silly. Why don't you go for a swim, too?" "Do you want us to get into the water?" Lotta inhaled sharply, feeling her nose go numb from the cold. Ozar wasn't enveloped in the river's icy embrace. His clothes were dry, his body was hot. But for some reason it seemed to Lotta that even the water couldn't cool him down. That hot body of Blessed One was always burning, eternal, like the fire they lit for the gods. Ozar froze at the edge of the riverbank, slowly reaching for the strings holding the cloak on his shoulders. "I worry that the priest won't dare to swim with a woman." What was he doing? Encouraging him or warning him? Lotta glanced at Volet, but couldn't bring herself to ask him to join her. He caught her eye, staring for a while. She felt her face heat up. And then he suddenly got to his feet. "I'm going to swim, too." Ozar looked at Volet coldly and thoughtfully. The Magus and priest looked at each other while taking off their clothes as if checking the other hadn't changed his mind. Volet entered the water. He stopped for a moment, clenching his jaw. His nostrils flared with deep breaths. "He's cold, too." Volet went on, getting deeper into the water. Hopefully they don't show much. He swam up to the waterfall and ducked his head underwater. He didn't appear back on the surface for several minutes. Lotta looked fearful around the surface in search of his massive figure, wading deeper into the river. Meanwhile, there was a splash behind her. Ozar was swimming her. She felt him approaching with every inch of her body. Lotta tried to hide her excitement, but the nervous movements of her arms underwater betrayed her whirlwind of emotions. Lotta turned around timidly. Ozar stopped a few feet away from her. But as soon as she looked at him, he swam a little closer. Lotta couldn't hold his piercing gaze. Thank God. You asked me to join you, and now you're afraid? The Magus is teasing me. With a smile on his lips, Ozar slapped the water, splashing her. Lotta screamed and laughed. Well, that's better. She tried to respond in kind, but each of her attempts only encouraged him. He didn't approach her, but moved constantly, bewitching her, making her follow him and turn around mesmerized by his circular movements. At the same time, Lotta was his only focus. He noticed every tiny movement she made. Smoothly, almost invisibly, he ducked under the water and suddenly appeared nearby, so close to her that she involuntarily flinched and recoiled. He laughed, immediately ducked back under the water, leaving light ripples behind him. Where is he? The Magus grazed her ankle, surfacing behind her. Lotta turned around and froze, realizing they were standing right next to each other. You look like a Mafka. I'm almost bewitched and at your mercy. Lotta couldn't turn away, even if she wanted to. It was as if the thin thread stretched between them, holding them close to each other. But Volet swam out from under the waterfall, and his appearance brought Lotta to her senses. She swam away from the Magus. She didn't notice how she got caught in a strong current. Suddenly she was being carried away, drifting forward way too quickly. But Lotta didn't even have time to get scared. Volet's rough but still somehow warm hands gripped her waist and pulled her to him. Lotta went limp in his arms, realizing that fear had pierced her body and immobilized her. She met Ozar's gaze. He didn't approach them, but she could feel his sullen rage even at a distance. They seemed to hate each other. Can you stay afloat? Her heart instantly started pounding at the sound of the priest's voice so close to her ear. Yes, I think so. Volet released her, and she swam away a little and turned back to him. Lotta looked at the priest, trying to decipher his stern gaze. It was hiding many secrets and many questions, but was there anything else among them? And wasn't that what she was trying to see? From time to time, they accidentally brushed each other's feet as the current playfully pushed them towards each other. The touch was light, quick, but each time it left behind an almost pulsating feeling. How often do you come here? Sometimes. That's not an answer. Why did you decide to come with us? Lotta could hear her heart beating wildly in excitement. She had decided to ask a question before she felt that there had been a reason. As if proving her right, Volet remained silent. I didn't mean to be rude. I came because of you. His simple, honest answer and striking indifference for which he spoke made her ears ring. Why? I have my own reasons. Shouldn't I know them? Maybe. But you won't tell me. It won't change anything. And yet... Vola looked at Ozar. The Magus swam up some rocks and, lying on them, watched their conversation. The forest is dangerous right now. I'm not sure even the Magus can protect you. Why? We may stumble upon evil spirits that fear nothing, not even us. Have you ever met something like that? Her voice was shaking. Her teeth were chattering so hard that she bit her tongue a few times. Volet's gaze dropped to her lips. In response to that, something tightened and turned over in her chest, but Lotta quickly realized that he was looking at the fact that they seemed to have lost color. You're freezing. Swim back to the shore. Lotta looked at Ozar. He tilted his head as if asking if everything was all right. She smiled. She pointed at the shore and shouted to him. Shall we go back? As you wish. Ozar didn't shout back. His voice remained calm despite the distance. Lotta heard him. His calm, low, rumbling voice. Lotta felt her cheeks heat up. She hurried ashore, now looking back at the men swimming behind her. What am I doing? I'm alone with the priest and the Magus. They're looking at each other like they want to jump at each other's throats. They swam back together. It looks like a wall has grown between the men, and you're the reason for it. That's because the men want you. how it is. Volet climbed ashore and held out his hand. Take my hand. Thank you. He lifted her effortlessly, as if she were weightless. She even caught her breath the brief moment she was in the air. The priest's hand rested on her waist for a moment, but he quickly removed it. Lotta noticed that he was looking over her shoulder. She turned around and saw Ozar's icy glare. The sun is setting. I think it's time to go back. The Magus is right. You might get sick. He said that still looking at Ozar. Can you boys calm down? There's tension between them, but I can't be the reason for it, can I? Says every woman ever. I'm just saying. My voice is killing me. Lotta quickly put on her dress, taking off her wet chemise. They returned the way they had come, through the forest. The sun was setting, and the night shadows were gradually plunging the trees into darkness. 3 people walked along the narrow path, 2 men and a woman. Their feet treaded quietly on the ground, occasionally breaking the oppressive silence by stepping on dry branches. The tension was heavy in the air, like an invisible veil, permeating every movement, every look. Ozar and Volod walked on, silently glaring at each other, the seeds of confrontation evident in their eyes. However, it wasn't just about Lotta. Old disagreements, looming problems, seemed to have ruptured like a festering wound. Seeing that silent battle, Lotta tried to walk carefully without drawing attention to herself. She felt trapped by their hostility. The Magus and the priest took Lotta home. When she saw her father at the porch, Lotta awkwardly said goodbye to them and hurried inside. Her father saw them in and frowned. Sorry I'm late. When you mentioned that you were helping the priestess, I didn't think it would turn out this way. They're teaching me to be a priestess. I'm going to be one of them. A multitude of emotions flashed across her father's tired face. He looked strong, energetic again in that moment, but that didn't bode well. There was rage, disbelief, and desperate terror in his gaze. However, only one word escaped his lips. Why? He's afraid. He's afraid for me. Please don't worry, because I like it, because I'm one of them. Do you disapprove? I feel like do you disapprove could be both. I forget what the hell these symbols stand for. I feel like it could be both, though. It's like a challenge, but at the same time, you're, like, trying to understand. I feel like it could be both, to be honest. But, why? Because I'm one of them. Are you, though? I'm actually gonna go with do you disapprove, just for whatever reason, gut feeling. Her father's lips trembled, but he quickly pulled himself together and said, I won't try to talk you out of it. But all priests and priestesses that I can remember were deeply unhappy people. Have you met Ozar? I don't want that to be your fate. Lotta wanted to justify herself, but he raised his hand, cutting off any further discussion, and went inside. I didn't want to be another reason for my parents' sorrow. Lotta heard footsteps behind her and turned around. Ah, hi, Hannah. Oh, it's you, Hannah. You scared me. Her older sister wasn't looking at her, though. Her eyes were fixed on the window of Lotta's room. Lotta followed her gaze, also looking up. She put her hand in her mouth and recoiled. Varia was looking at her from the window. Do you see her, too? Lotta grabbed Hannah's hand and looked into her eyes pleadingly. You see her. I know you do, but why? Did she talk to you, too? Did she show you dreams? Lotta knew that Hannah wouldn't answer, but the questions continued pouring out in an endless stream until her sister looked into her eyes and opened her mouth. She mouthed a single word. I give you a 5 on that one. I give you a 5. No, I was thinking 4. You got 1 haze, 2 reality, 3 ties, 2 determination, 1 compassion. Oh, that's what they meant. Okay. I was thinking empathy. Continue. Alright, so, long story short is, another episode to go. So, please remember that if you did enjoy, to like, share, and subscribe. Leave me a comment down below letting me know your thoughts. Also, I'll say the following. So, first and foremost, my throat is ever so slowly dying, aka my voice box. Holy shit. So I'll say the following. I'm trying to catch up. Please keep that in mind, especially the voice issue and being sick and the whole 9 yards. I will say this. So the reason why I chose Tata, in case you're kind of curious, is why not? Seriously, why not? You know, you don't know your feelings. She's super sweet, let's be honest. Tata's really sweet. She's really nice, the whole 9 yards. I could see how you could develop feelings for a person like that. We haven't, let's put it this way, also, we're single. Right? No one's been like, hey, yo, you want to be my girlfriend / you want to be my wife? Like, no one, we're single, right? So I know there's a lot of people out in this world who are just like, yo, like, you know, companionship, love, like whatever heads my way, I'm willing to accept it. And then one day you finally get someone that's like, will you be my girlfriend? Now, for instance, like if you, or boyfriend, if you're like, you know, you sit there and you're like, okay, shit. Let's just hypothetical this, right? We got Vola, we got Ozar. Dragan, I don't think's really a love interest, I'm gonna be honest with you. I think it's weird that we're on episode 7. And only now is there kind of like a thing going on. So, I don't think he's a love interest. So you got 3 love interests. So, okay, you've accepted, let's just say, Volit proposes to you, right? He's like, yo, I want you to be a thing with me. We're basically exclusive. Then you would have to sit there and go, yes or no. You would have to think about it. There's a third option. And you would have to say, okay, well, that means I'm going to have to be exclusive with him. It means whatever's going on with Tata or Ozar isn't off the table, right? That's how I look at him. That's my reasons. In case any of you guys are ever wondering, like, why does he go with all the love interests? It's also for your viewing experience. I'm going to be honest with you. A lot of you guys are like, you know, for instance, on some of these books, you guys are like, yo, I like David. I like this. I like that. You know, especially for Astria's Broken Heart, right? A lot of you prefer the one versus the other 3. Again, I'm just trying to give everyone their best viewing experience while also seeing what everyone has to offer, let's be honest. So, do keep that in mind. Aside from that, you know, I'll just say this. So, we got a Colossus book coming out with the update, right? Which, yes, I will be covering ASAP when that comes out. And I'm just sitting here going, everybody's making such a big deal about the Colossus and they basically Attack on Titans, and I'm sitting here going, did you guys read this chapter at all? We have giant, like, Attack on Titan gods. And, like, you guys have informed me that some of these books are also, they play in other books, so I'm just sitting there going, is there a possibility that this actually plays into that book? Question mark? Or vice versa. So, it's interesting to think about now, isn't it? Other than that, thanks for watching. Catch you all later. Peace out.